I'm Matt, the etrailer. If you have a 2022 Ram 2500 and you're looking for a tonneau cover that not only is going to keep the back of your vehicle nice and clean, any debris or water out of it, and give you that extra protection, but you want something that's going to be really easy to use and give you that nice sleek design, then the Pace Edwards Full Metal JackRabbit tonneau cover with the Explorer rails is going to be a great option for you. So let's check it out. What I really like about a hard tonneau cover is not only will it give you that extra fuel economy and just have a really nice look to it, especially the one we have today. It is a little bit shiny, and just the ridges on it just make it look very rugged too. It's just going to make it stand out. But they're going to give you that extra protection. So unlike if you had a soft roll-up tonneau cover, someone could walk over here and just cut into one of those. They won't be able to do that. And this one's also going to have another thing that's going to make it super secure, and it's actually going to have a lock compared to some other ones. Other ones, you can actually open it up by the very front of it, and let's say you already have a gap in between your tailgate and your tonneau cover for whatever reason. Maybe you've had your truck for a while. Someone might be able to reach it. This, they'll have to have that key to unlock it. As you can see, this is going to slide and move, just like that. And it is pretty smooth for the most part. Sometimes it will kind of stop and lock into place, and that's going to be because we have this strap here. If I'm going to reach and grab it, I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is actually going to lock that. When I go to move it, it's going to stop because it's going to be set points this will open up to, and that's going to be perfect if you only want half of your bed space open. Maybe you need to grab a few tools, but you want the other half covered. You'll be able to do that. But the reason why we're able to get this smooth operation out of the tonneau cover we have today is because it's a canister style. So it's just typically easier to work with, and there's not going to be a lot of labor that goes into it. Now, if you do like a tonneau cover that opens up in sections, so you can only have maybe half your bed open at once, I'd actually recommend checking out some of the folding tonneau covers. Those are great because they can really maximize the amount of space you have in your bed. The downside, actually specifically with an 8-foot bed like we have today, is they can be pretty difficult to move because those panels are typically pretty thick, and when you're folding them over, you're just moving a lot of weight at once. Especially with a vehicle this high up, you really don't have too much leverage to move this. So that's why I really recommend a canister style for this type of truck. And something else I wanted to point out is the rails themselves. These are going to have these grooves in them, and these are actually the Explorer rails. And what this is designed to do is so you can put some accessories on here. And they're specifically designed so you can actually put a type of ladder rack here. That's one of the downsides with most ladder racks or tonneau covers. They're not going to really work well with one another. In our case today, this is actually designed to work with the ladder rack, so if you have a lot of gear you want to outfit somewhere else, or maybe you have those extra long items like lumber or kayaks, anything of that nature that you typically wouldn't be able to fit in your bed, you'll be able to do that with a ladder rack. And since we're talking about some measurements, let's kind of measure how our canister is sitting in our bed. Like I said, if you're really trying to maximize your bed, this is something to think about. So right now, if I have this pushed all the way in, this is going to be sitting at a little bit under 15 inches, which isn't going to take up much space at all. But it is important to think about if you have a lot of items, but with an 8-foot bed, you're probably not going to run into that. But even if you are trying to use every square inch of this bed, you still can use this space. You just have to use the space underneath it. And I can give you the height of that. And right now, if I do that, that's going to be sitting at right about 9 inches. Which is still pretty good if you have anything like lumber that's just going to lay flat in your bed, or if you have any totes or toolboxes, those should fit underneath there. Now on the flip side of things, if you have something like a fifth wheel in the back of your bed, another measurement you'll probably have to know is going to be the actual height of the tonneau cover when it is unrolled, and that's going to be just slightly under 19 inches. And another clearance issue you might find with this is actually going to be your stake pockets. So this can be actually a pro or a con depending on what situation you're in. If you're using your stake pockets a lot, this is definitely in the way. And trying to take this off so you can actually use your stake pockets is going to be pretty difficult because it's a heavy tonneau cover. Now it's easy to remove for the most part because these clamps aren't drilled in any way. They just are really applying a lot of tension to the bed rail, and your tonneau cover rail still is really secure, but isn't any major modifications there. But if you're someone who's not really using their stake pockets at all, this is actually something people like because you won't have to really worry about any water going through there or getting around there, and it'll just be less noticeable. It just kind of offers more of a clean look. And I know I mentioned a little bit about water resistance. It will have some drain tubes on it, and these drain tubes are just going to allow water, any water that builds up in the canister to flow out of your vehicle. Now I will say, putting on these rails on your tonneau cover can be a little bit tricky. This time we didn't have too many issues, but I've had some other ones that really fight me a lot. But if you are curious to see that installation, just stay tuned. We'll walk you through the process. To begin the installation, I like to lay out all my parts just to make sure I have everything. So here on the left side, we're going to have 2 sets of rails, and then we're going to have 2 sets of drain tubes. In the same bag that the drain tubes are in, they're going to come with a few other things like this foam seal, and we're going to have some smaller hardware, which we'll go over a little bit more once we get to those steps, some keys, and some lubricant. And right here, we're going to have this cardboard box. In here is going to be all your clamp hardware, and we'll go over that a little bit more detail when we actually clamp this into place. And right here, we're going to have the cover of your canister. And speaking of the canister, I have the canister right here on the ground. And really our first step is going to be removing these little panels or wood panels here on the side of them. And there we have it. And now we can kind of prep up our tonneau cover. So right now I already have it roughly in place, but the process for doing that is, what I recommend is using both sections of your box on either side. So it's going to help support it and keep it a little bit elevated above your bed rails. Now, the reason why I recommend using both sides is because this is a heavy tonneau cover. And speaking of that, I actually recommend grabbing a friend to help you out, so both of you can grab one on each side. But if it's just you, you can still do it by yourself. What we're going to do is just make sure you grab that strap that comes with this tonneau cover and just wrap it all the way around. I like to do mine a couple times just for that extra security. And then you can lift it up from the center. I also recommend just using your other hand to help support it so it doesn't sway from either side. But I'll show you what I mean here right now. Just going to lift it up. Just like that. And walk it into place towards my bulkhead. And for the moment, we're just going to have it roughly here, and then we can adjust it later on. And now we can move over to installing our rails. Really, it's going to be the same for either side. You just need to make sure you have the right rail. So if I flip this around, I can point out a few key points to take note of. This first one here, you'll notice we have this relief. We want to make sure that relief is going to be on your cab side or closest to the canister. And this larger section here is going to be sitting on top of your rails. Now typically at this point you would take off this paper that's on the back of that foam. It's really just there for shipping purposes. I'm going to leave mine on there since we're just doing this for demonstration purposes today. But once you've done that, then we can slide it on. And I will say this part can be a little bit tricky, so the biggest thing is just to have a little bit of patience as we do this. So a few things I kind of changed up is I only kept one of the boxes in the center because I wanted to elevate one side a little bit more. So I just have that piece of plywood that came with your kit, and I have something underneath that will kind of raise it up a little bit more. So I have a little bit more height above my bed rails, because with this one I noticed since these rails are so long, they're going to sag down some. And if it's too low, you're going to have clearance issues when you're trying to get this in the grooves. But we can start putting it in now. You want to start off at an angle. And also doing this with a friend can help a lot, but you can do it by yourself. You put this in at an angle. You're going to kind of line it up with those grooves on the side, just like that. And then it should start to sit kind of flat like this. And then I'm just going to push it down until it lines up with this secondary groove here. And right now it is sliding right into place. That's pretty rare. It doesn't typically happen that easy. A lot of times you might have to wiggle this around some more, apply some more pressure. You might even have to spray some type of lubricant in here, like some silicone. And then sometimes we've even taken a wood block and a hammer at the very end of this and just kind of hammered it a little bit. But sometimes it will just slide in pretty easy like it does today. The biggest thing you're just making sure is there's going to be a hole underneath here. You want to make sure that hole is lined up with the hole that's at the very end of this blanket here. Now we can grab that bolt with a split and flat washer and we can secure our rail down. So I'm just going to find that hole now. Be a little bit tricky because sometimes I'm going here blind. If you are struggling with this, I'd just recommend laying down flat in your bed so you can get a better visual on where that hole is. Now we just start threading it on. And from here we can lower our tonneau cover back down. Now just take your time with this. You just want to be careful so you don't drop it. And it's as even as possible. You just want to make sure that your tonneau cover rails are on top of your bed rails. If you need a little bit of help, you can grab a friend. If you don't have any friends around at the moment, you can do this by yourself by just grabbing that strap we used earlier, wrapping it around. And from here, you can just kind of lift up on this some. And just slowly take it out. Just like that. And now I'm going to remove one leveler or one of these platforms from one side. Again, still just taking my time with this because we don't want to drop this. And there we have it. It's pretty good on one side. I'm just going to adjust the other side until it's completely flush. And now we can secure these rails the rest of the way down to your bed rails. The way we're going to do that is with our clamps. Now this is what your tailgate side ones are going to look like when they're completely installed. Now there's a lot going on here, so I'll kind of break it down. I will say there is a difference between the tailgate side and cab side. The cab side are going to have longer clamps, and they're also going to have longer bolts or hand knobs. You can see here, these are both going to be longer, and they're going to go on the cab side. So the way you're going to install this, you're going to start with the clamp, and you're going to come over here, and that relief I pointed out earlier, you'll find right here. With that relief found, you're going to put this in at an angle. You're going to allow it to catch into that groove and tilt it until it's kind of flush all the way across, and then you're going to slide it into place. Now typically I'd like to slide this closer to the canister itself, but in this case we have some stuff blocking on the back side, so I'm going to go to the other side. The biggest thing is to make sure that this is completely on. As we do have that relief, you don't want half of it off the relief and then half of it on that kind of lip within that place. You grab that secondary piece of the clamp and you're going to slide it onto that kind of a C shape at the very end of it. Slide it into place. Make sure it is completely on. Sometimes this will miss, just like that, and it won't really sit all the way on. There we go. You can tell it's on because I can't remove it. With that in place, I'm going to grab that longer bolt. Make sure there's a flat washer and split washer on there. Put it through the center of that opening, and then top it off with this cylinder nut. When you're doing this, you want to make sure you don't tighten it down completely just yet. We just want it to be really just making contact with the clamp, maybe with just a tad bit of resistance, but that's about it. And then we're going to repeat this process on the front side. Now that we've got all 4 clamps loosely installed, we can check to see if the placement is correct. So what I mean by that is you want to make sure there's enough space in between the end of your rails and your tailgate. So I'm going to close that tailgate real quick. Make sure we're getting a good seat. And let's kind of check this out. So if I'm looking right here, that's looking to be about a 1/16 of an inch. So make sure that yours is fitting around that too. Now if yours has a bigger gap, you'll have to scoot this a little bit closer to your tailgate. If it's making contact, you'll want to scoot it a little bit away from your tailgate. Just make sure you check both sides to make sure everything's squared off. And once you're done with that, then we can tighten those clamps the rest of the way down. Once you have everything in place now, I recommend just checking the width of your rails. You can actually find there is a specified measurement in your instructions. Once you've checked that, you should be good. If you find that yours isn't matching up, you might have to use some of those little white shims that come with your kit and just kind of put them on the inside. You need to make sure you measure closest to the tonneau cover and then closest to your tailgate. With that done, if that didn't work for you or you want another method to check this, I recommend coming over to the blanket or the tonneau cover. And what we're going to do is we're just going to try to shift this some. Now we have a little bit of play, and that's what we want. We want just about 1/8 of an inch at most of play. That looks pretty good. And again, I am going to check our tailgate side now. See how much movement we have here? Yep. It just looks like a little bit of movement there, so just about 1/8 of an inch. So we're looking good there. And we're going to move over to the kickstands now. So typically you'll find some washers and a wing nut at the very end of this bolt here. Just make sure you remove that. And when you install it, the place you'll find is going to be on your tailgate side because you only have 2 kickstands. And you're going to find that you have a little hole right there. Just stick that bolt through that hole until it passes all the way through, just like that. And then I'll just put my flat washer and my split washer on and top it off with a wing nut. Now I'm not going to tighten this down all the way quite yet, just a little bit so you have a little resistance. And you're actually going to reposition this until it's going to make contact with your bed wall. Now I'm going to loosen this up some because I don't have enough space to really get it out of there quite yet. There we go. And sometimes it's just going to be a little bit tight because not too much space underneath here. What we're trying to get is just to be as flat as possible on your bed wall. That feels pretty good there. Then you're just going to re-tighten this down. Once you can't do it anymore here, there'll be a little hand knob on the side, and you're going to notice this is going to start to rise, and you're going to just tighten that down until this is about the same level as your bed rails. And now we can really just focus on adding the smaller pieces to the tonneau cover itself. So what we're going to do is come over here, and you're going to have this little strip of hook and loop. Now I already have one installed on my vehicle, but typically you would just remove that plastic piece on the back of it, stick it on a spot that makes sense for you, and secure it down, just like this one here. Now I honestly don't typically use them. I find using this spot here, if you have one of these hooks or anchor points, that'd be this better spot for you. It just makes it a little bit easier in my opinion. But then the next thing you can do is grab this lubricant. And what you're going to do is just open this up. I'm not doing that today since we're just doing this for demonstration purposes. And then lubricate this type of seal. We're going to have this sweep seal on top and then this wear strip on the bottom. Basically, you're just going to go up and down these rails a few times. Do it on the other side. Then afterwards, I just recommend pulling this all the way across a few times just to make sure that lubricant is being spread all the way across, making sure it still feels good. Next up, we're going to kind of work around our canister now. So we're going to have this foam seal. When you're doing this, When you're ready, you'll take off this paper, and that will reveal this adhesive side to this foam. Don't take it off quite yet, because we need to find a good spot to put it. Now this one already has a foam seal on it since there's a tonneau cover on it before. So you could put it here. It's just usually what works better with your tonneau cover. A lot of times it will work great on the top. You want to try to get this as flush with your rails as possible, and just kind of spread that all the way across. The best way I find to do it is just to take off that paper, put it on, and then drag and apply pressure as you go along it. Eventually you'll reach the other side, and you're going to typically have a lot of excess. What you do at that point is just maybe grab a type of knife, just cut that excess off, and you should be good. And we're going to have some drain tubes that come with your kit. Now our neighbor today isn't going to be installing these on his truck because he has a different way of draining them out. But just to kind of show you what to expect, you're going to have this type of opening. You're going to find a similar shape to this underneath the canister. There's going to be two of them, typically pretty close to the very edge of it. I'm finding mine right here. You're just going to line up this shape. Make sure that foam washer is on there. And then you'll just push this into place. A lot of times you'll kind of hear a click, letting you know it's on there all the way. Sometimes you might have to rotate it some, but typically just pushing it into place will get the job done. And then with this other side, you're just going to put that through a hole on the bottom of here. Typically, there will be a hole right around here or a tab that's plugging up a hole. In our case today, we don't have that. If anything, we have this liner that's covering up the top of that. So what you'll have to do is just drill a small hole through there so you can stick this hose. When you're drilling through there, just make sure you're careful that you don't make contact with your cab, and just check for any type of wires behind here so you don't damage anything. And really the last part for the tonneau cover is just going to be putting on the cover. So there's a couple things we want to check. And that's to make sure you have the right side for whichever. So we're going to have this foam side, that's going to go on your cab side. And then on the other side, you're going to have this brush side. That's going to go near the blanket side of the tonneau cover or closest to your tailgate. You're also going to find two holes. There's going to be one in each corner. Those are typically going to also be closest to your cab. Those holes are going to line up with some little nuts in these little grooves here. What I typically recommend is you can actually slide these around, push this closest to either side so they're even. Once you've done that, then you can start putting on the top of the cover. Just lower it down. Now a trick to this is actually grabbing a sort of light, shining down through there so you can see if everything's lining up properly or not. Right now I have a lot of light coming in from the top, so I can kind of see it now. You're just going to grab one of these bolts, push it through. Sometimes that powder coat will be a little thick. Once you have it in there, you'll just kind of hand thread it on there. Sometimes it'll go in all the way. I just recommend double checking to make sure it's actually threaded on. And at some point, you will tighten this down completely. I actually recommend installing both these bolts loosely first, and then tighten them down all the way. But that's just a look at some of the installation and features of the Pace Edwards Full Metal JackRabbit tonneau cover on the back of our 2022 Ram 2500. Now, if you're actually using this, driving around, just let us know what your setup's like and if you like it or not. But I'm Matt. Thanks for watching.